So today, basically, we're going to be doing a breakdown of our whole process and kind of the shortcomings and things we learned along the way of the Jordan Fisher project. So if you haven't seen that, came out a couple months ago. Um, it was probably one of our largest projects to date. And I know, at least personally, one of my favorites. I'm sure it was Ross's too.
Yeah.
A lot of work went into it, so happy to be able to share that with you guys today. Actually, want to pull up the slideshow?
Yes, sir.
So, taking Jordan Fisher from Broadway to broadcast. So, that was my idea, by the way. I swear that's a great title. Um, but I think that explains a lot as far as this project goes. He's an actor, he's a singer, a dancer, performed on Broadway. So, taking a lot of that into consideration and trying to bring that into the gaming and streaming world was really important for this project. And like I said, this was pretty long time in the making. I think this was about 3 months, if I'm correct, Ross.
Yeah.
Started all the way back at the end of last year, towards the beginning of December, and then finally finished up and launched towards the beginning of March. And just kind of give you a background of how we got this project and where it came from. Um, Jordan's pretty connected with a lot of the clients that we've already done. So Courage was a huge reference, Nate Shot, huge reference for us. And so when we saw this project come in, we were pretty excited for it. So pretty much starting off the project, and every VIP project we go through starts with a consultation call. Have to get what the client wants, kind of gather the deliverables, the goals for the clients, as well as just a general design direction to kind of kick us off and um, get us started on the right foot, get our mood boards going and such like that. So, is the remote working for you, Ross?
It's not changing the slide for me, so I can advance it if you want.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, there we go. So here you can see this is the project scope. This is pretty much consistent through most of our big clients. Rebrand plus pretty much all the stream design assets you can think of. With Jordan specifically, he wanted a new logo and just a general design language to use throughout pretty much everything he does, his new website, his acting career and such. And then as far as the stream design goes, this pretty much includes everything. The intro, transitions, alerts, sub badges, everything you can imagine. And from there, it's kind of just breaking down the kind of variations we need. Are we going to be doing 2D, 3D, stuff like that? So that's kind of all the stuff we take into consideration when starting a project. And then kind of after looking at what we need to get done, it's asking how we need to do it. So we got to look towards the project goals. So Ross, you can go to the next slide for me. So the main goal with the Jordan Fisher project was to kind of create an overall solution that he could take not just inside of streaming and the gaming world, but to kind of take that to acting and dancing and music and all of that. So really creating a complete solution that embodied all of his talents and his very energetic personality. So start off with exploration, as every project should. Where are we gonna get the kind of inspiration for what we're doing? We got to find out, what is good for the project, what we absolutely don't want in the project. So not all of that goes into the exploration phase. And Ross, I know you were at the initial call for the Jordan Fisher project, and he kept using some keywords, and we have those up on screen right now. But can you kind of take us through what that call was like?
Yeah, he definitely said sexy a lot. He just wanted something that was sleek. I think he did mention the kind of gold and like marble aesthetic even in that first call, and just something that was like, inviting to his audience and that embodied what his stream is all about. And so he wanted something that was, elegant and like we have up here, sexy, fun, positive.
Yeah, and I thought what was interesting is like he's such a calculated person when it comes to like everything aesthetic about him, like his camera setup. He needs like the super shallow depth of field. His background was very rustic and warm and inviting, so he definitely took all those things into account um, when going through this project. And so, kind
Excellent.
of, yeah, yeah. So, kind of going off of that, we got to ask ourselves, um, what are the design styles and elements that are going to kind of portray those keywords that we laid out? Um, so, is it colors? Is it certain materials? Is it um, straight lines, curved lines, edges, stuff like that? That you have to take into account and see what fits um, the general brief of what your client gave you and those keywords that you want to hone in on. And so to do that, we use what we call mood boards. So, um, like I said earlier, if you're not using mood boards already, you should be, because that's how we're starting every single project. So, just to give you a definition, a mood board, visual presentation or collage of images, text, objects, all of that, and just in general to convey an idea or a particular topic. So, we'll go ahead and share screens here, and we can kind of show you where we started off with the mood board.
Ooh, sleek transition.
Shout out Ross for that transition. So here is the beginning phase of the mood board. It's much larger than this, but we'll get into that later down the line. So we kind of started off thinking, um, like taking it back to that question, what elements are gonna kind of portray what we want to in this. So it kind of just starts off with Behance. I mean, that's always a great place to start. Um, just typing in keywords like white, clean, sleek, flat, stuff like that. Um, Ross, do you have any other like go-to sites or portfolios that you like to go to for references?
Pinterest is always pretty good. I think Jordan himself on this project shared a lot of shared a Pinterest board with us, which is really really helpful in kind of guiding the visual style. And I'm sure Trey will show you that in a second. Um, for animation reference, Pinterest isn't always the best, but sometimes like seeing things on Behance can spark an idea, or yeah, stuff on Vimeo.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get into a couple of these just to show you guys kind of how we pull things from it. So this Microsoft Build project is something I've come back to like multiple times on many different projects, and I think it does a great job of doing that. That really kind of flat, but just a little bit of depth to it. Really, just a clean overall look. And so, just scrolling through here, they did a really great job of kind of mixing and matching 2D elements with the subtle 3D and just pops of color. And I think that really fit kind of the vision we were looking for on Jordan's project. And then you can also see we laid out some more references just specific to branding and typography, um, just things that might evoke the same type of emotions that we're looking for, and even just looking at some color palettes. And so once we're done with that mood board, the initial one, where like all the designers are in on the call, we move into the logo design. So that's where I come in. It's kind of my specialty, and this is what I spent most of the time on during this project. Um, so my process personally, it differs for a lot of people, but um, going through the sketch, narrow down the sketches, going into the vector after that, and then finally finalizing, tweaking, um, really fine tuning those last few details to the project. And so, starting off with the sketches, this isn't; these are pretty rough. Um, and personally, I know a lot of people sort of flesh out all their sketches in Photoshop or wherever they're sketching at, and then pretty much go to Illustrator and they can just vector right there and it's done. But I kind of work the opposite. I go pretty much as rough as I can, and Procreate is what I use on the iPad. Just go as rough as I can, get as many ideas down that I can. I know Ross gets on me a lot of times. He's like, you even got to get the bad ideas on there. So that's what that I try to do. Anything that comes to mind, just put down on paper. And so after the sketching project process, we go into the vectoring. And those sketches weren't something I don't think we even showed Jordan those. Those were mainly for me and the team to kind of get ideas of where we wanted to go. And then from there, I just started vectoring as many as I could. Um, and you can even see some early versions of the final logo in here, and then some of the other options we ended up presenting to him. And this is the narrow down section of the process. So we picked a few that we liked, and to go with them, you always kind of want to show show the logos in context. So um, clients really aren't going to uh, understand if you just throw a black logo on a white background at them. Jordan might; he's a creative mind, but a lot of our clients aren't really going to understand. So give them context, show them how it might look, um, and so yeah, I'll go ahead and show you a few of those. So this is one of the first ones we showed them, and these were all like sent in a PDF document, make it real easy for the client to digest. And so this was the first concept, going with just bold colors. The square is such a um, just simple shape, and it's really strong. And the idea for this one was to use imagery throughout the project, and kind of make it really personal for him. In the end, we kind of thought it was a little bit too traditional as far as the shapes go. I think even in one iteration, we were like, "Oh, this looks like a law firm's logo or something like that." So, um, really wanted to move away from that and go for something a bit more fluid and um, dynamic for Jordan. And so this next one, um, this is the early stages of the one he ended up choosing. Um, and we kind of based this art direction off of a few of the projects we took reference from. Um, and for me, these are just super rough, like and quick style frames to kind of show the client what they're going to do. But our motion designers ended up taking this and running with it, and that's pretty much how we work, is taking those really rough frames, giving them to our motion designers, and letting them build those out into full-fledged motion graphics. And then the final one, um, it was actually a kind of a close race between the one he ended up choosing and this logo right here. Um, in the end, we felt it. You can kind of read an H from it, and it wasn't as, I guess, unique as the option we ended up choosing. And so at the end of all of these, we always show the client all of the logos side by side so they can then make those comparisons, see how they differ. No worries. And so yeah, this is the final slide that we typically show them in the PDF.
So just to clarify, like why show this slide at the end specifically?
So as you're going from the beginning to the end of this document, you're seeing, okay, concept one, here it is. Concept two, here it is, giving them context and stuff. And then at the end, you just want to show the logos in their most simplest form. Like, this is where you're truly going to know which one's the right one for you. And I think after showing this to Jordan, he was like, okay, this is about as final can get, the one on the left. And I think this is the slide that he sees and he's like, okay, that's the one. I know that's the one. So we ended up going with that and then making some tweaks towards the end to the final logo. In the next slide. And so there you go, the final logo. So from that last preview you saw to this preview, we tweaked a bit of the geometry. I know Ross helped me out a lot with that. Just kind of balancing the weights of the strokes and the size of the circles and making sure optically everything kind of lined up. And then I think the biggest thing that set it off for us was the crossbar and the F. So in the last one, it was just like a straight bar, and we were really just struggling on what we could do for this. And this came along, and we just knew that one was it as soon as we saw it.
And did you want to share screen on the artboard on this one, or was that lit for later?
Yeah, I can go ahead and share screen on this.
Okay.
Yeah, and so here's kind of the artboard that we went through after kind of finalizing the logo. So this is what we started with after Jordan went ahead and picked which he liked best. And so we felt this was a bit too thick. The circles might be too big. Like I said, the crossbar is not something we really liked and thought fit with this. So not the prettiest artboard, but just iterating a lot and finding what works. And so we got down to this, played around with a few layouts, but ultimately the sort of symmetry on this logo we felt fit the best. So, and then in here, getting into the word mark, we wanted just something simple that would work well with the logo. Tested out a ton of different layouts here and lockups, but ultimately the best one was just simple, straight across. I think this is Poppins, right, Ross?
Yeah, that's Poppins. I think we decided on that pretty early.
Yeah, and this is actually, I think, one of the fonts Apple uses, and that's kind of how we found it.
They use,
if I'm not mistaken.
No, they use a font called San Francisco that they made themselves, but I think this has kind of a similar feeling to the Apple font.
Yeah, for sure. So we can head back over to the slides now.
And I'll go to the next slide.
Yep. Yeah, and so that was kind of it for the logo process. Before we move on to the art direction, I'll go ahead and take some questions if anybody has it.
Nico asks, will we be able to download this slide? There are a ton of useful steps.
I think we could. Yeah, I think that's something we can do.
What might be a cool thing to do is maybe share some of these out on social, some of the specific slides, or.
Yeah, we can do some tweets along with some text, kind of give it some context.
Maybe put a thread together or something. But thanks for the suggestion. It's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then Moonivation asks, she says, I interview creatives on my podcast. One example being Expect in Divinity. Would Trey and Ross be interested in coming on as guests or perhaps other VBI members to gain insight to the team and its talented individuals? Well, first of all, thank you. It's very honored to be invited on. That might be something we were interested in.
Yeah, definitely. I actually watched that one with with Julian and Ryan, and that was a great episode. So I'd be happy to come on. Anything else here? Let's see.
It's like Caleb's typing something. Oh.
How much do you think of art direction during the logo creation? Does it influence your creation? Yeah. So like I showed earlier, like the initial mood boarding wasn't even about logos that much. Like we had a few references, but it was really just an overall feel and kind of taking those into account when going into the logo. How can we bring those elements that we see from these projects that aren't even about logos to the branding portion of the project?
And something I'll touch on later is that I think the presentation that we have here, a slideshow, gives the illusion of it being like a linear process, but it very much is not. And there's a lot of things going on that influence earlier steps in the project, and it's very cyclical throughout the project.
Yeah, definitely a lot of going back and forth. Like Ross's part doesn't necessarily come after my part. Like he's working as I'm working, and it's really a collaborative process, and kind of all happens at the same time.
Let me go ahead to the next slide.
Yeah, Nico, I'll answer Nico's question real quick. Do you know any good mood board websites that are free? We use Mural, Mural. I think it is free for personal use. I'm not positive on that. But it might be limited to the amount of boards or stuff you have. But even just using Photoshop, just pasting in photos that you find around the web could be good too.
Pinterest can be good too.
Okay, so art direction. This is the kind of art direction post, like finding out the logo and getting in more calls with Jordan. So at this point, he had put together a mood board of his own, and this kind of honed down exactly where we were going to go with the project. And so this included pretty much black, white, gold, very sleek looking things. So on the next slide, you can kind of see all the photos he dropped in there. So once we got this, we knew it was like, okay, we have a pretty strong idea after seeing this of where we want to go. Getting in those calls with Jordan was very important. And he kind of, he definitely gave a lot of references that you don't see a lot of clients getting, or I mean, clients giving. And I think that's just a factor of him being like the type of creative person he is. And I even told Ross, like during the whole process, I was like, man, it's kind of intimidating going into calls with Jordan just because he's so creative. And I feel like, I don't know. But he was always super positive about our work. And this was honestly like one of the most smooth projects we've had to date.
For sure.
Shout out Corey with the 5 gifted subs, by the way.
Go Robo.
But yeah, after he sent us this, we went straight into style framing. So if you don't know what style framing is, it's basically creating static frames of what you could imagine like a final frame of an intro looking like, or anything like that. And so with this, Ross, Julian, and I kind of split off, and we're like, okay, all of us are going to make some style frames and then come together and present those to Jordan based on kind of the mood board he set, and then obviously all the other research we've done up to that point. So here you can see we all just took his logo, put it into some 3D scenes, and kind of went from there. So some of these style frames here, you can kind of see where our inspiration came from. The marble, obviously a huge part of the project, and then the bottom right, the matte black and the gold was huge for us. And the top two are other ideas we explored, some with the fluorescent lighting, and then this cool, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but Julian came up with that, and that was insane just to see that, even just on a style frame. And so after this, well, like Ross said, this wasn't very linear. So like kind of during this Ross is already planning for the intro scene and getting ideas down. So that's what he's going to get into next.
Awesome. All right. Well, bear with me because I'm kind of like juggling a whole bunch of stuff right here. But so yeah, so all while Trey was, I think the whole process with Trey started, and all the logo and stuff that started a little bit towards like the first half of the project, and towards the second half of the project is when I started working on a lot of the stuff for the intro and animation. So firstly, like I'm on it. So like I mentioned, there's two steps to the whole intro creation process, and that's the planning and two, the execution. But like I said earlier, it's rarely ever going to be that linear where it's just two steps. It's really more like this. It's a cycle. So I may be working on a storyboard at the beginning and planning something out, and as I start developing some of the shots in the storyboard into like 3D scenes and look developing and all that, something might change. I might have a different idea, and it might go back to the drawing board where I'm kind of filling stuff in. And the whole process this way was a lot more iterative than just making a storyboard and then turning those into 3D, right? So two things that we really wanted to figure out and nail down were, what is the story we want to tell, and how do we want to make the viewer feel? And so the story doesn't have to be something super literal. It can be very abstract, but just as long as there's kind of like a beginning, middle, and end to it, and have it make some sense. And as far as how do we want to make the viewer feel, it's a lot to do with kind of the emotion that we're trying to evoke. And on this project specifically, we already know we're working with one of Jordan's songs. To start the project, we were working with I think it was Contact, and then about like a third of the way through we ended up switching and switched to Be Okay, which was his latest single he released. And so go ahead, Trey.
I was just trying to say it was real nice working with his own music because they were able to send us over the stems for it. And we were able to use that kind of throughout all of the animated graphics and even the intro.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to touch on it a whole lot, but big shout out to Pedro, who did the editing for the like montage video before the intro and edited together the songs and kind of was working with the stems and stuff. So thank you, Pedro. And so a big tool in the intro creation process is like my new favorite thing. It's called an animatic. So an animatic is like a preliminary version of a movie, or a video in this case, produced by shooting successive shots of a storyboard and adding a soundtrack. So we already had the soundtrack, which was Be Okay by Jordan, and the storyboard, which I'll get into in a second, isn't super traditional. A lot of times motion designers will like sketch out on a storyboard sheet of paper and it'll be like hand drawn. For this project in particular, I ended up doing like kind of composite sketches in Photoshop. Some of the stuff I did in 3D and it's a little more advanced, but some of it, and I'll get into that here. Here's some of
It's crazy, even with the animatics you sent over, it's like just words on a screen syncing up to a beat, and somebody not as motion graphic inclined as I am even can like understand where this is going and envision in my head. And
yeah, and I will definitely share screen here in a second and then play back like one of the earliest versions that we had of that animatic. But here, you can kind of see the visuals start to come together. I think these were, all these shots were ones we used. There were a couple that I made of shots that didn't end up being used, but this like kind of cloth over the ball, for some reason it reminded me of theater somehow, and it had this mysterious look to it. So I thought that was a good way to start it. And then some of these things, like you can see the musical connections, so like the strings that you might find in like a string instrument vibrating, the vinyl record spinning, the like kind of sound waves being emitted, and all just the whole thing just being very sleek. And then here I'll show a couple close-ups of the individual frames. Okay, let's see. Share screen.
And how'd you come up with these few frames, and like what tools did you use to get those?
So most of it was just like quick sketches in Photoshop. Like I tried to keep it under 5 or 10 minutes, just like using like a soft brush or just whatever brushes default in Photoshop to just kind of get the composition and the feel down. And then, a lot of those get scrapped, but let me pull up. Yes, so this here, and sounds good on that, right? You can hear that?
Maybe.
Should be.
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, it's only natural to feel out of it, and I want it all, but get none of it. Living in the past, living in the future. I let the moment pass, cause it's what I'm used to. Said it's easier to give in to fear instead of being here. It's a long ways from feeling like the old days. Baby, one day I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be okay. Be okay, be okay, be okay. I'll find a way. It's a long ways, but I know that I'ma be okay. You gotta be okay, be okay. I'm gonna be okay.
So, and you can see a lot of that didn't even end up being used, and a lot of that was just like me just kind of throwing my hands up and going, I don't know yet. Like, I don't even know what's gonna go here. I'm gonna figure it out though. So it also did not end up being nearly this long, I don't think. This is like 1:05. I think the actual thing, we ended up cutting it down. We also used a different song, you'll notice. This was Contact, I'm pretty sure. But you can start to see, like I started planning out some of the match cuts, like with the vinyl record kind of going through the camera, and then showing this sort of abstract hallway with the gold balls. And so you also kind of start to see the imagery of like these gold spheres, and that kind of connects back to the two circles and the logos and those shapes. And one thing I'll touch on, which is as I was describing before, where we kind of go through this iterative process. About halfway through the intro creation process, I kind of came up with this idea of this kind of like Venn diagram of like one side being the white marble, and then one side being the dark marble, and then in the middle having like this gold intersection. So the idea was of his sort of these two worlds of, Broadway, singing, dancing, acting, coming together with gaming, and sort of this like intersect is where his little community lives. And I thought, we wanted to focus on that a little bit more. So I think the next thing to do is to start diving into a couple of these projects to kind of show how we go from this animatic and these, these sketched frames into actual, executing something final.
Pretty sure it's magic, right? Is that what you do?
Yeah. There's actually a button here as a plugin for Cinema 40. You just click the button. Yeah, so I think I had a specific order I wanted to go tackle these in. So some of these, oh no, that's gonna play music, isn't it? I don't know if we want to do that. Yeah, you guys definitely hear that, right? Are you picking up that audio, Trey?
Not on my end, but I can't hear what the stream is hearing. Do we want to take a few questions here real quick?
Yeah, sure. We can take a couple questions.
I think Jensen earlier asked, how do you go about getting the information from a client? I have issues deciphering what they actually want.
I'm sure you can speak to this too, but a lot of times we'll start off with a consultation, and that'll be with sometimes it's the designer, but a lot of times it's the project manager. So our awesome project manager John will be in a consultation with them and get some of those questions up front. And I think having that, even if it's just like a voice call, helps clear up a lot of the confusion and gives you a lot more opportunity to ask the follow-up questions that are so important for
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to like it seems especially in our field, but I'm sure it's even outside of our field. Like clients can be really vague at times, and it's kind of your specialty and job as a designer and creating a brand is to be like a translator for them. So uh, kind of over time, you get this experience of um, kind of knowing what the client is talking about, even if they don't really. So it's a pretty interesting process, but just getting in there and mood boarding and kind of just taking keywords from the client and stuff like that is how you're really going to pull information from them.
Oh, we got a lot of questions.
Yeah, we can take more, or keep them for after this section.
Spartan asked, did you already show the end result? No, we will get to that very soon though. Okay, yeah, I'll save a couple of these for later after this section. So yeah, it sounds like you guys do hear the audio, so I'm just not going to scrub through the timeline here. But kind of the principle behind a lot of these was using these, I think they're relatively new to Cinema 4D. This is R21. So we're just using these sound effectors to affect the like displacement of things. So we use that in this one, where it's this sort of a ball in the middle of this kind of vibrating vortex of cloth. Yeah, so there was this scene, and this scene, it was really cool to get the vinyl record in here just to kind of get that music imagery in. But then also this one's important because it ties into the next scene, which I think is my very favorite scene of this whole intro. And that is the hallway scene, as I called it. And I think I don't need the sound here. But that's where the animation comes in here, and there's kind of this the term is lost on me, but this effect where the camera is zooming in while the field of view is getting wider, so it kind of creates this sort of surreal effect. And also I have this sky in here where the sun's actually rising, right like on the hit of the beat, the sun's rising.
And so with this, is it kind of just an aha moment where you finally figure it out, or are you iterating on these ideas specifically? How does that go?
I think a lot of it is once we start getting the stuff into like the Premiere timeline here, I'll just sit here and like I'll hit play and I'll watch and just see like kind of just looking at the black screen and you're using your imagination, like what would, because I think using the music to your advantage is so powerful, because it's like it sort of multiplies the effect of the motion. You kind of get this like the motion on its own is like cool, but when it's paired with the music, I think it has this whole other like it like hits you different, It's different.
Yeah, and it's a piece of advice we even gave one of our experts. He's working on a project now, and he's kind of stuck on an intro, and we're like, just get a song, just find a song that you like, put it to the timeline, and kind of go from there. And then from there, he's able to really kind of dissect what kind of motion goes where, and able to get ideas from there.
Absolutely. And then this is another scene where it's again, the audio is driving. It's a little bit different this time. It's using like this plane effector and the sound to make this like this audio spectrum effect, where I think the left is like the low end and going up in frequency to the right. And yeah, and then lastly, we have this logo reveal where it's just kind of this quick cut here, which gave it a nice kind of like snappy motion. And then of course the gold balls following it.
And if I'm not mistaken, this was like the first scene you did, or at least one of the first scenes.
Yeah, I think so. I think this might have been one of the first ones. I think I had this idea early on of this, like, again, it like this cut matches with the music. So the music was so important for this project.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that just shows people that, like, you don't always have to start from the beginning. Just go where your mind takes you. That's advice I kind of give out a lot, is just work on whatever's top of mind. You don't have to start from the beginning every time. So just get what you can get done.
For sure. Okay. I think the only thing left to do is to play the final video.
Let's go.
So this is the actual, like, the reveal video that we played midstream. We're going to talk about it later, but one interesting request that we'd never done before was he wanted to transition to the new graphics live on stream. So that means like going from the old graphics and setting up all those scenes and then switching over midstream. So that was a fun challenge, but we had this kind of video that was the transition from old to new. So I'll play the video. All right. Yep, that's it.
I think the balls on the track might be my favorite scene.
Really?
Yeah, I love that one.
This is my least favorite transition in the whole video. I just didn't like it. But, and a cool detail on this is that actually the circles here, like the radiuses of the circle, match up to the beveled logo there. It's the same shape.
Ross always thinking 10 steps ahead.
Yeah, and then yeah, this is the shot I was talking about earlier. So it goes from the vinyl record and into this, like, you know, really abstract hallway thing. And then the sun rises. Okay.
So nice.
Where do we go from here, Trey? What's next?
Let's take a few questions and we can talk about
Sure.
kind of the rest of the stream designs.
Okay.
Ross, do you have any recommendations on creativity, 3D, or motion design books?
Creativity. A really good book about creativity is a book called Creativity Inc. It's by Ed Catmull, and I think he's the president of Pixar Animation. That's a really great book. It doesn't touch so much on actual designing, but it's a really good, like, book about managing people and how to manage a creative business, and kind of, it's almost kind of like the human resources of creativity and how you cultivate a creative environment. So that's a favorite of mine.
Yeah, I would recommend a book, but you know, I haven't been up on my reading game lately, so I have to get back on that.
And not really motion design, but a lot of us on the team read a book called ID. I do not recall who the author was, but that book was full of really cool case studies and sort of like these interviews that were transcripted into the book. That was a really good book.
Derek asks, what about asking them to provide reference? Yeah, so that's something we do for every single project. Jordan happened to go above and beyond, and that helped out a lot. Going through the Pinterest and adding a lot there. And even with the clients who may not have as much as Jordan did, even just giving like other brands that they see or other work that we've done, giving those as reference, it really helps out a lot. Nico asked, did Jordan tell you guys he wanted 3D right at the beginning, or did it get approved after mood boarding? I'm not exactly sure how that went. Do you know, Ross?
I don't really remember. I think it kind of naturally went in that direction. A lot of times, like, it doesn't have to be the client says I want 2D or 3D. Like, they're these two like mutually exclusive separate things. I think sometimes it's just whatever the right tool is to achieve the look that they're going for.
Yeah, definitely. I know this is about Jordan Fisher, but how many projects do team members work on at a time usually? Was it full force on this task or something else? I think it definitely varies. Sometimes we're jam-packed with different projects, and sometimes we're really just focusing on certain ones with Jordan. I know that began right at the end of last year, so a lot was going on towards the end of that month. So a lot of other teammates had to kind of step in and help out where they could. And then specifically with Jordan, I know we had a lot of work to do there. So whenever we have a project of this size, we definitely want to focus on it as much as we can and make sure we're putting out the best product.
So yeah, it's usually a handful of people. It's not the entire team. Like, we're all kind of working on different stuff. And I think I think generalist is probably a good description of a lot of the motion designers we have, who can work kind of on 2D and 3D. I think, obviously some people are stronger in some areas for 2D versus 3D, and some people have their preferences. But
and another question kind of going along with that was, how many team members on our project? Specifically for like the different moving parts to it. So a project typically has, we already have our project director on every single project, kind of managing the relation with the client and making sure things get done on time. Typically one branding artist. If they do the stream design as well, then that's just one, but sometimes it'll be multiple. And then we have our motion designers, programmers, sound engineers. So it's really a full house when it comes to these projects. I'll take one or two more here. What was the difference between working with Jordan versus normal gaming streamer? I think I touched on it earlier a little bit, but just generally him being like this creative person, he kind of had an idea of where he wanted to go, and he was very calculated about everything. So that definitely made it easier for us. I don't think there was anything that made it harder about working with him. Ross, can you think of anything?
just like you mentioned earlier, the stress of almost being intimidated by his creative prowess.
Yeah, definitely. And one more here. How long did this take from start to finish? I touched on this at the beginning, but about 3 months, I think. We had our first call right at the beginning of December, or end of November, and we launched the first week of March. And so, do we want to get into the rest of the stream assets?
Sure. Yeah. We can. Those who have questions, we will get to those.
Yeah, and so what we want to do for this section is actually take you into the OBS scene collection for him and kind of show off all the different scenes he has and the layouts and stuff that we made there.
I'm not sure how well we're gonna be able to do that, because I'm streaming from OBS.
Gotcha. I can show off some stuff here on my
Yeah, go ahead.
screen. 1 second. I just pull up the mural. Answer a few more and I'll get back to you. I
Sure,
just need to
yeah.
pull up some files.
Nico asks, how do you approach setting a final price if you're adding new steps midway through the project? In the case of uncertainty of it being 3D, which I assume is more expensive. Yeah, I mean 3D can be more expensive, and I think we have to be flexible. Usually, if they're paying a deposit up front, and then we're adding more deliverables onto the end, then yeah, it would just, something like that would just really be added on to like the final price they're paying at the end. I mean, usually we're trying to be as flexible as we can with the client, and not have the budget change an extreme amount over the course of the project. We want to know what they're going to expect and be flexible with them. Ryan asks, I'm about to graduate from Full Sail next year with a graphic design degree. Any advice for freelancing right out of college? Ooh, Trey?
I would say just I think this project is kind of an example for that, but take the projects that you can get, because references can go a long way. Obviously this project came from Courage and Nate Shot, which came from their original projects way back in the end of 2018, and we had definitely a lot of projects kind of domino effect off of that. So just be patient, take the projects you can get, value your work, and then it'll kind of all come together.
Yeah, I think the simplest advice is to not wait till next year to start freelancing. Yeah, I mean, you can start now while you're still in school and get a head start for sure. Let's see. Percy asks, what technique was used for the alerts? So for the alerts,
get into that with the widget, right?
yeah, we're going to touch on that in a second. And
then we'll just take this last one here, Ross. How'd you begin to learn about 3D animation, and what helped you progress?
I didn't go to school for design or motion design or film or any of that. This is all kind of self-taught for me. So a lot of it was tutorials, just kind of getting in that software and testing and just running with it. It's very much, you don't know how to do stuff at the beginning. You have to tinker around in the software. And I mean, even for like just this Jordan Fisher project, I've watched a ton of tutorials to get there, because I had to learn new stuff. And I think that's some of the most exciting stuff I get to do in this job is doing something that I don't know how to do, is to learn how to do something new.
For sure. I pulled up a few of these previews here, Ross, if you want to switch over to screen share.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just want to kind of go through a few of the assets that we made. Obviously, by the slideshow and everything, you can kind of tell that the bulk of the project was spent on the branding, logo design, kind of art direction, and intro, because like Ross said, that's kind of the driving force, getting people excited about the stream, and kind of showing off, kind of all of the design language and stuff like that. So getting into this, with the goal with the overlay, not even specific to Jordan, but to most of our clients, is um, one, adding value to the viewer experience, and two, um, not taking up so much that it's distracting from the gameplay. I mean, these are content creators who focus on what they're doing. The people are there to watch them, not to watch the alerts or see a ton of stuff on screen. So the approach with this was very minimal. And this is a preview that we sent to Jordan himself. So kind of going through this, the idea behind it was all the alerts are gonna to live right in this house, this box right here. And then you kind of have a couple different things that he wanted on there: top donation, sub train. Some streamers might prefer to put more emphasis on the sub train or different parts, but this is kind of what Jordan was looking for. And these are the style frames that I put together, and then Ross kind of takes that and runs with it. So all the smaller alerts, anything like under a year sub or under $50 donation and stuff like that, all kind of house themselves in here, slide out. And I want to give a huge shout out to Bruno, programming pretty much everything that has to do with VIP projects. The man works on pretty much every single project and has his hands in a lot of those. So shout out to him.
And Trey, I actually did manage to get OBS open in another screen here.
Okay, I'll just go through these quickly and then we can go over to OBS.
Great.
And so yeah, again, going through these are all really just style frames in a sense that these aren't actual deliverable files that we're sending to the client. Those are what Ross ends up working on and Bruno ends up coding in. So like the chat and the widget in this background here are all stuff that kind of comes in different parts. So as you can see, really just matching his overall aesthetic, taking those cues that we took from the original art direction and calls and bringing those over to the rest of the stream assets. Same thing for the ending, call outs to social media, and this cool YouTube video player widget that we've been using on quite a few of our VIP projects, and Ross can kind of show you that later in the OBS settings. Offline screen, something I want to call out here is that presenting your designs in a context for the client. So sending them just the image is fine. It works, but when you just take an extra step to show it on their channel, show how it'll look, it just adds that much more to the client and really shows your effort when it comes to that.
And it's also very good for the designer because, we get to see, we kind of check ourselves and go, wait, it makes us think about what the context is. Because sometimes that can kind of fall into the background when we're designing, is what's this actually going to look like?
Yeah, I've made countless Twitter headers that end up cutting off information and Ross yells at me after the fact. So just do the legwork ahead of time and you won't have those problems. These were the Twitch panels, pretty straightforward. Kept it simple, used the kind of design style that we used in the gifted alerts, which Ross will kind of show off. And then lastly, profile art, again, showing it in context. And yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the rest of the stream assets. There was also sub badges that our amazing emo artist Ruth worked on. And she works on a lot of those for our VIP clients.
Great. I'm going to steal it from you now.
Nice.
Yeah, so this is like what our setup looks like in OBS. We have all the scenes here. Forgive me, it's going to play the audio for the transition, I think, but So right now we don't actually see any of the gameplay stuff because right now it's like it's all hooked into Jordan's actual sources. But yeah, we have so what Trey was talking about, this ending screen. So this actually pulls his latest YouTube video from his gaming channel. It looks like one of the video links is broken right now, so that's unfortunate. But so yeah, pretty much just we can't show you guys the code or anything, but really it's just pulling like info from the YouTube API. So you can, with a little bit of programming knowledge, you can do a lot of cool widgets like this where you're just pulling from these platforms, open to the public APIs to kind of get this data driven visuals. So I think that's really cool and something we've been pushing for lately. And then another important thing to touch on here is we have all the game scenes with the webcam and the widget positioned, how it makes sense for all the different games. So what we usually do is we'll pull in like screenshots here when we're setting this stuff up and make sure that everything's in the right spot. We're not covering anything important or covering anything that's going to affect the viewer's experience. And then some of the other scenes here are just things like involving the webcam. And then, we noticed on his stream that he likes to do the thing where he kind of cuts in close to the webcam. It gets close to it. So having scenes where it cuts in close, and you'll notice here it doesn't play a transition. And that's because we're using this nifty plugin called Transition Matrix, which lets us control all of the different connections between scenes and what transitions are supposed to play. So this is a big upgrade over like the default transition override settings. So we use that for a lot of projects, and that's been super helpful.
And something to touch on here is it's really not all about the design when it comes to these stream assets. I think seeing a lot of what people are putting out on Twitter and stuff, like, you have nice designs, but you got to think about what value you're adding to the streamer's stream and what you're adding to their viewers experience. So something like this, the YouTube screen, so simple, but it goes a long way in just adding that much more. And the same with the widgets and stuff like that. Like, if you don't know coding, I would suggest getting a little bit of knowledge. You can always get into Streamlabs and use CSS and HTML and JavaScript and stuff like that to just take your designs one step further.
Yeah. Trying to think of how we can show the alerts here, because obviously this is hooked into Jordan's.
Yeah, do you have any video files?
Yeah, let me put us back on split screen, and then if you want to answer some questions, I'll pull up a couple of videos here.
Derek says, "Whoa, transition matrix. What is that?"
It's the best thing ever.
The transition matrix is a plugin for OBS Studio, and it kind of lets you better control. Like, you can already do this in OBS Studio, I think, but lets you better control like what transition files you're using, like between specific scenes, and so that you can really kind of fine tune how it looks going from one scene to the next. Is the slide over animation JavaScript? Percy asked.
What's the slide over animation?
I think he's talking about the alert widget. It's kind of a combination of a few different things, CSS, JavaScript. Looks like John actually answered that question, but yeah, I think JavaScript is pulling more so the info, and then CSS as far as like any animations on that.
Yeah, a lot of it is us actually just rendering out the WebMs and kind of placing that in the HTML canvas and playing those videos based on the JavaScript functions.
Mal asks, I'm a streamer and a designer. What do you suggest to make my work better? I think just in general, like I said, just think about what viewers are going to value, and um, it doesn't have to be too complicated. Just think about functionality of your work and um, how it's all going to play together, and just focus on that.
I think learning, having peers that you can exchange feedback with and learning to accept feedback is also an important part of improving yourself.
Definitely, like get your work in front of people. I know at least just being in VBI has I've grown so much. Like even 6 months ago, I'm like, I don't really like what I did there. So always improving and just looking to take my work to the next step. And then Derek asked, Trey, do you get into motion or video work? Not really. No, I've done a couple things here and there, but no, I typically just stick to the branding and stream assets.
Oh, you did do one motion design thing for this project though.
Oh, I did. I did a Jordan is eating like loop animation, which turned out pretty fire if you ask me. Got another question here. Without giving any hints, do you guys have any projects of similar scope in the works? I I feel like we always do at this point. There's always just some project we're really diving into and putting in hours in. So, um, yeah, we are.
Yeah. We are clearing out this question, kid. This is great.
I think we're caught up. Sweet.
Oh, Caleb's typing more stuff. Maybe.
Do you have video files for those alerts?
Yes, I have a few. So these are the gift alerts. I will. Okay. Switching over. Oh, this is really weird. I'm switching back to the other scene. We'll like cover up the information here. Yeah, so here, we had 2 tiers of gifted sub alerts, and that's something we do in a lot of projects is we have multiple tiers of the gifted sub just to incentivize people who kind of go above and beyond and gift, really large amounts, how we can kind of get the stream hyped up and show that recognition to that person. So this is the idea of this kind of counting up animation, and then 200 gifted subs by visuals by impulse. So
Yeah, and I think with gifted subs, it's like that's probably one of the most requested things like streamers are focusing on these days. We've noticed even with Courage, like we put out new gifted sub alerts or large donation alerts. Like as soon as those go up, so do his subs or donations. So chat always really likes those instead of the streamers, obviously.
Absolutely. Play this one more time. So yeah, this is also a pretty simple look just to go along with like the gold theme of all the rest of the assets and kind of looks similar to the widget. I don't think we're gonna touch too much in the widget itself. It's pretty simple. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to touch on. It's just the animations play when new events come in, and we have kind of a nice like timer bar animation. I think a lot of people, the default is just using the stream label timer where it's just like the text source in OBS, and we like to go a little bit above and beyond on that and visualize the timer, and I think it helps create some sense of like urgency, like the time's running out. So we've done this in a couple projects, like the one I can think of, like Josh OG's project, we had a subtrain timer, and that one like makes like warning noises when it starts getting low, and you start to see it turn red, and that's a fun one. But just kind of finding a way to visualize the timer is always good.
Was there any others you wanted to share, Ross?
You know, I could share. It might be good just to show the final presentation video here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Great. Yeah.
Maybe full screen that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to this screen, and if we have any more questions, or you can just talk with chat, I'm gonna pull that up.
Questions. Let's see him. John is Bay. He wanted to come on a call, special guest for this podcast, this project spotlight, but unfortunately that did not end up happening. Hi, trade chat here. Chat is looking very cute right now, looking like a snack. Okay, Candace has a question, BB.
You know what? I'm slightly struggling here.
Oh.
I'm just gonna pull it up on YouTube.
You left me hanging. Wow.
No, okay. No. I'm just gonna pull up the YouTube video.
No, Candace left me hanging. I mean, who's Candace? I don't know. BB Bunny. How many people were involved in this project overall? Let's see, probably close to like 8, just about, between motion design, project director, sound engineer, branding artist, emote artist. I think that's about it.
Yeah, sorry guys, you guys just heard a clip of an Artlist advertisement, which I don't understand why they're advertising. We're already playing their music on the stream. Okay, here we go. Here we go, chat. Yeah, so this was the final presentation video, and these are always really fun for me to do. I really love doing these presentation videos because I think it's a cool way to show the value and like what we created all in like kind of a digestible, short, this one's 1 minute video. And the same principle applies here where I pretty much started with an animatic, like going kind of, cutting down the song to the length I needed it and kind of deciding like this goes here, the alerts go here and so on. And I think it's a cool way to kind of tell the story of the project. So I'll go ahead and play it and stop talking.
Stop for a minute. I ain't looking for love.
The new alert box, so that's where you'll start to see everything. You'll see like the hype train where the subs are concerned and the countdown as well. It's all right here.
Yeah.
Chat is gassing us up, or gassing you up, dude.
Oh, yeah, and so, I don't want to watch CDO. All right. This clip here was an awesome clip because we just kind of stumbled upon this going back into the VOD. We found this clip of Jordan, and it like fit like perfectly into the time I had set up in the video, and I was so happy to find that clip and work that in because I think having the clip of the streamer's reaction in that video like adds a lot of adds a lot to the story of the project. And that was a big day for us, the launching his project.
Yeah, and kind of just wrap that up is like a real big motivator, at least for me, and I'm sure for you, Ross, and the rest of our team is. I mean, there's so much stress kind of leading up to projects, and kind of that pressure of like, oh, I don't want this to break on stream, or I hope he really likes his stuff, blah blah blah. I hope chat likes it, but finally seeing that final reaction, his reaction was priceless when it launched. So that's a real huge motivator and kind of the driving force behind like leading up to the project and staying calm and not letting the pressure get to you.
Mm-hmm. And we've had our fair share of launches where things go south, then again, still have to have that composure. And because if you're freaking out, the client's freaking out, So you have to be calm there.
So I think that about wraps up the project. Went through the logo design, kind of the pre-planning, the intro, the rest of the stream assets. So if any of you guys have any more questions, we can take a few more before we end off here, and then we'll be on our way.
Oh no, yeah. I was just called out for not being subbed to the VBI channel.
Yeah, wow. Fake fan.
Well, I've already seen all this stuff by the time it goes up.
True. All right. I'm going to take that as no more questions, but if any questions kind of pop up, we do have a new, how do you become so cool? Well, I was born and there was that. But if you have any more questions that pop up, we'll be around replying to text over at, I'll type it in the chat here, 720-738-6669. Spam Caleb with all your questions right there, and he'll be sure to get back to you. All right, guys, have a good one.
All right.
We out.